Hey everyone, welcome to Tent Talk, the Farmers Market podcast. This podcast is all about farmers markets. Whether you're a farmers market manager or a small farmer, food maker, or artisan selling at farmers markets, you have found just the right podcast.
I'm Kat Fields-White.
And I'm Bridget Myers. We're longtime farmers market managers, educators, and consultants. Get ready to catch up on all things farmers market pros with us. During this season of Tent Talk, we're bringing you episodes on navigating the challenges and recognizing the opportunities to survive and thrive in 2025 and beyond at your farmers market. One of the things we've found that can help is remembering that you're not in this alone.
Today's episode of Tent Talk, the Farmers Market podcast, is supported by MarketWorks. Escape the generic spreadsheets and endless emails and consolidate your market applications, space reservations, invoicing, and reports into one convenient program. It's easy to establish and update vendor profiles and create polished market maps to give your website and your marketing some extra love with MarketWorks' simple interface. If you're ready to streamline your market management systems, contact Chris at MarketWorks by clicking on their logo on the resource page at farmersmarketpros.com.
Welcome back to Tent Talk, everyone. We are talking in this season about surviving and even more thriving at farmers markets in 2025 and beyond. Today, we're chatting about how much easier and more effective it is to meet challenges and introduce innovations when you have a team. A hyper-local coalition of farmers market managers can move mountains, or at least barricades, to progress. Nice one. So we are discussing something that's very relevant because this is something that we have been working on lately, but just talking about how our job is weird, as we always say, and bringing a group of like-minded folks together can really, really help. It really can.
Oh, man, it helps so much. Yeah, and you've been really good this year about actually getting something started locally. We've talked to people who do this in other areas.
Yes.
But getting a San Diego group together has been really cool. We've gotten to see live and in person how this works. We have talked to other local coalitions. So back in 2018, we chatted with, there was a small group of women, maybe just a couple, that were putting together a Chicago farmers market collective because they were trying to figure out how to deal with a towing situation and how to get the city to either tow or allow them to tow cars off their farmers market sites and what the charges were going to be for that and that kind of thing. And they said it suddenly occurred to them that maybe it was possible to speak to other market managers.
Perhaps we can talk to them.
It's a crazy idea.
It's a crazy idea. That was such a good episode, actually. And they were so funny. And it just kind of echoed, I think, what a lot of us feel if we aren't in some kind of like hyper-local coalition of fellow market managers is that, can I talk to them? Like, are we friends?
Competitors?
Are we enemies? Yeah, like kind of weeding through all of that. And they were also just a hilarious group of ladies. But just kind of talking about what I think a lot of us think, which is like, how do I even talk to them? And probably also, I really want to talk to my fellow market managers. It's just crossing over and making that connection that can seem really, really hard because we're all really busy. Our markets are on different days. Are we competitors? Are we able to discuss things?
Do we see things the same way?
Exactly.
We're going to open a can of worms. So today, that Chicago group, the Chicago Farmers Market Collective, has 70 active members, and they have regular calls, and they do a lot of joint advocacy, and they have some actually interesting resources that we'll talk about a little bit later in the episode if somebody, is really feeling the energy and wants to take your local coalition even farther.
Yes.
There's a lot of state associations that have monthly calls that bring market managers together or market participants. I know there's one in Washington State. Minnesota does a good job of that. Wisconsin has kind of a baby state association. Hasn't been around for too long, but it's growing, and they have a call. North Carolina, I actually sat in on their call a couple of months before I went to a conference there, and it was right when they had those horrible hurricanes, and it was really a place to kind of share tears and stories and also what are we going to do next and figure out rebuilding. So that was really helpful. And Pennsylvania has one that the Penn State Extension runs, but just this year, Philadelphia market managers are also finding it valuable to meet with folks in our very specific region. So we put together a super local group, and it's actually been recognized as a farmers market advisory group to the city to talk about things like street closures, health department issues with applications and that kind of thing. So I think what we're talking about today is not the official state association groups, but super local groups that you put together because I mean, we know that what is meaningful sometimes to farmers markets in Northern California have nothing to do with how things are operated down here in Southern California.
Yeah, and like we always say, there's a lot of agencies involved in, pretty much all farmers markets, even markets that aren't really regulated by a ton of agencies. They do have different groups that kind of monitor what they're doing at their markets. And as we've said before, in California, we're dealing with state laws and agencies, and then also county and also city. So and our neighborhood town council or something like that could come up too. So it's like all these little groups that are really, it kind of narrows down and boils down to a little niche group of us that are within the bounds of some really tight regulatory agencies or folks we have to deal with that just applies to us and not everybody in the state.
Yeah, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
And I can see maybe that what applies to us as market managers we tend to manage markets in large cities as a group, just us personally. But I can see also that if you were kind of scattered out across a rural area where there were a lot of little tiny towns and rural markets, you might want to get together and talk because your concerns would be so much different than people running markets in big cities.
Exactly. Yep. And I know we're going to talk about that too, just with our, San Diego's a good group of markets because there's not a ton of like little rural markets really in the San Diego County, but we have, big city markets and really smaller neighborhood markets. So kind of the difference and how to find things that are the same for all of us, and then how to even break up to smaller and deal with kind of issues that pertain to the size and location of your market as well.
Yeah, because there's some markets in our area that are in the city or in one of the kind of suburb cities that are still in the greater San Diego region. But there's also a few market managers in our group that operate in unincorporated parts of San Diego County. And I know they're always kind of in a little huddle in one corner during some part of the meeting because they have to deal with the sheriff's department and a couple of other issues that we don't deal with in the cities.
Exactly. Or if a market closes a city street versus being, at a school parking lot and things like that, that came up at our meeting. So it was just different ways that we're dealing with our markets, but still all in the same kind of city neighborhood.
Yeah.
Yep.
So, I mean, one of the things that you do with local coalitions or any kind of local groups that you meet is it's a place to download your frustrations. I know that there were a couple of people, one of them might have been you, Bridget, talking right before the meeting that said, I really need to have this meeting this week because I need mental health support and about an issue that had come up. And I know you and another manager were kind of off talking about that because you had a similar thing going on.
Mm-hmm.
So talking about mental health, having somebody that understands when you had a big win. Like sometimes even your family doesn't exactly understand what a triumph it was to overcome some regulation or some new requirement for your space layout or some neighbor that's cranky or what have you. Nobody gets that except another market manager. So that's really important. So it's kind of like when we all meet our people at Intense, suddenly there's somebody that understands what we do, but hyper-local and all year.
Exactly. Yeah. And I always say this is like a therapy session for me. I mean, I use it for a lot of other tools, but really, I love to just talk to other market managers because, again, they get it. I mean, I probably like bore my husband to death talking about it. And he has come and like helped at the market when I've needed him in a pinch. And obviously our families are all very involved in the markets as folks who eat and benefit from the markets. But I think really talking to somebody who has had to, just simple things like, how do you order like barricade covers, or how much caution tape do you bring to the market, or how do you deal with a vendor who won't like pull their table into their 10 by 10 space? Just little things, little challenges or questions. It's just so helpful to talk to people that are like, oh, I know what to do, or, oh, I'm having that same problem, and then kind of turn around and brainstorm with other folks who have it figured out. I think at these meetups, we've had a couple so far, I always end up talking to the manager of the other really large market. So my market on Saturday is one of two of the biggest markets in San Diego County. And so there's one on Sunday as well in a different neighborhood that's managed by a different manager. And he and I we have running a huge market just kind of presents a couple different challenges that the other markets just aren't dealing with. And so it's nice to be able to talk to somebody who's really like 100% going through the same things that I am. And so just bouncing ideas off of each other, and then also just kind of like venting about, not like talking about anybody else in particular, but just kind of venting about how draining it is. I mean, we really had a conversation about he asked me, how many days did it take you to decompress after the market on Saturday? And I said, well, I'm kind of like back to normal like Tuesday afternoon.
Just in time for your Wednesday market.
Just in time for the Wednesday market. So, and he was like, yeah, it takes me like 4 days. I mean, so it's a lot. And I talked about the difference between the Wednesday market and Saturday. And then he also runs a market on Friday that's not as big as the Sunday market, but those are so close together. So we talked about that. But just, having the ability to talk to somebody who really gets it. So whatever kind of feeling that you're having about your market, it's nice to just find somebody who doesn't work with you, doesn't work for you, isn't your boss, just who you can say, okay, we're having like parallel kind of feelings about these things and support each other, because you can really, it can be really, really hard. And so some weeks I don't feel like super great after the market. I get really overstimulated. It's a lot to manage. We talked about how we are responsible for the safety of 20,000 people.
Yeah, so many people. It's so scary.
That's really a lot. That's really a lot for one person's brain to like be handling every single week, week after week, year round. So that's a lot. And so just having someone to say, oh, yes, I also feel that way. I'm responsible for the 20,000 people that come out to my market. Not to mention, we're responsible for 200 small businesses and small farmers. Like, I'm responsible for them.
200 families that are relying on the owners of those small businesses and small farmers, or, 400 or 500 families because they have employees. And so you have so many people's well-being in your little cupped hands.
Yep.
It's a lot.
It's a lot. And dealing with someone who is in your direct area. We talked about like a new fire department regulation that came into play this year that I had to relocate some vendors in the market. So just moving a vendor to a different spot is always difficult and traumatizing sometimes for all parties involved. And then also I lost some space of the market. I lost available space. Luckily for me, I have spaces that I keep open at all times to rotate substitutes in, and also for this purpose. If I ever need to tighten up the market for whatever reason, then I'm not kicking someone out. And so another large market really understands that, because they had to make adjustments. They had a big move with their market, and they had to actually lose some vendors and lose a lot of space as well. And so having a huge market and losing space is something that's just like a really particular, specific thing that happens.
And how do you mitigate that effect on your budget?
Yes, exactly. Yeah, so just kind of being able to talk to somebody who's like, oh, yeah, that fire department regulation where we have to like space out the booths now, when really we had them tightly crammed together because we're a big, huge market. It was just, it's just nice to talk to somebody who has, or someone that's come up with solutions. So him and I kind of batted ideas around like, oh, I do this with my booths, or I made a little extra space by doing this, or he has like a 5x5 booths that are in his market now. So we talked a lot about that. Like, how can we have these vendors maybe shrink down so we can fit everybody? And that's kind of a thing that comes up in like a very specific, like, we're in the same city, we're dealing with the same regs kind of thing. So being able to join together with other San Diego market managers has been such a benefit in that way.
Yeah, totally putting a pin in that 5x5 booth, or actually, we used to have 5x10 booths.
5x10s,
in an area that we needed to shrink down because a neighbor wanted his driveway protected, a business neighbor or something. And those booths can be so handy because a lot of vendors only have a couple of products they don't have. Their display looks a little bare in a big booth. Yeah. And that way more people have the opportunity to vend. So anyway, we'll come back around to that. Is anybody making those tents anymore? This is a sideline.
This is a side conversation. We're going to have a tent episode all about tents. But yeah, just dealing with that. And also something that's San Diego specific is that we're right by the ocean, and we have a lot of storm drains that we have to protect. So those are in, if you close a city street, you have to protect storm drains. So just dealing with how do you navigate that, and all the things that, shoppers don't see, a lot of the vendors don't see, that those things are happening in the background. So being able to talk to somebody that really gets it is really, really helpful. And it's been such a gift to like talk to someone in my neighborhood who does the job that I do and have that therapy sesh, but then also have the things that really help me run my business better.
Yeah, for sure. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's a good place too to share regulatory information that's changed. Like you're talking about the fire department thing. Mm-hmm. I will bet that they probably started at the big markets to share this information. And I can bet that there's smaller markets in the county or in the city of San Diego, I think that was a city thing, that haven't even gotten that message yet. But at some point, some fire department inspector is going to show up and they're going to be in violation.
Exactly.
And they may or may not, how inspectors are. They're either very nurturing and teaching kind of people and helping you do the best to comply, or they're gotcha folks. And, so if they get the wrong inspector and they haven't heard this information before, it's good that y'all who got it first were able, because of the coalition, to let the smaller farmers markets know, hey, this is coming down the pike. They might not have gotten to you yet, but it's coming. So start looking at your map. These are some ways to mitigate it. These are ways that you can work around it.
Exactly. And that's exactly what I did. Is the day that he came out, I was at jury duty. He came to the Wednesday market. So I was talking to him on breaks, and he was really nice. But our old guy, who apparently was letting us get away with a bunch of stuff that I didn't exactly realize. And, that was lovely of him to be so nice. But he should have told me that, we weren't really following the spacing code. And then the new guy came in, and he, of course, wants to follow the rules. And he told me, he said, Bridget, I need you to follow these rules. I can't just kind of fudge it with you, because if something happens at your market that could have been prevented by something that's in these rules, then they're going to say, hey, why didn't you give them a violation when you were out there? Why didn't you give them a warning? Why didn't you tell the market they were not in compliance? Then it comes back on him. So it really is in everyone's best interest. Plus, not to mention, first and foremost, these rules are in place to keep people safe. So we want to keep our shoppers safe.
Yeah, and I think once you got over the kind of shock of it and started thinking through it, I think we all came to the conclusion that, this is actually safer, especially in an emergency situation, which has become more common.
Yeah.
The world is what it is, and so we want to be ready for all these things. But,
my goal is to make my market the safest place that that a large amount of folks can gather. And so what I did that day is I texted everyone's phone number that I had that was a market manager that closed to San Diego City Street. I just texted them and was like, hey guys, this is what happened to me today. He hit my market first because it's, bigger, more prominent market. And he's coming back on Saturday. He's going to do the same thing on Saturday. This is what he told me. These are some ideas I have swirling to make these adjustments. And everyone said, oh my gosh, I hadn't heard that. I'm going to make these adjustments now so I can kind of be prepared when they show up, or at least have an answer and say, oh yeah, we're working on this right now. So it was super helpful. And, it just makes all the markets better when we do that kind of thing.
Yeah. Well, I think sharing information is important. Even sharing rumors. I think there's a rumor going around now, and I'm not sure where it started, about a state agency that is thinking about significantly raising a fee that we all pay on a state level. I'm not sure it's true, but I think one person or maybe two people have heard it, so it's enough. And the fact that they could share that means that each of us who has a council representative or a state representative that we're in touch with, that we maintain a relationship with, we can all kind of get ahead of it and check it out and see, is that coming down the pike? And how are they justifying this? And can we get a listening session and talk about what effect this would have and why it's not fair?
It's not fair. And how that would affect all of our farmers and vendors, because those costs then need to be passed down.
Right.
Because it can't be the sole burden of the farmers market operator, since we have our budgets to operate the market. So really discussing and how it would affect smaller markets versus bigger markets and vice versa. And really market managers are, for the most part, very tuned in to, the local policy, the local representatives in their area, because we have to get permits and we have to go to neighborhood business meetings and we have to go, we have to get these emails with this information about, whatever we're doing permit wise at our markets. And so we are already engaged and tuned in there. And so it's nice when a group of us can get together and say, okay, who do you know really well? Who comes to your meetings that you go to in your neighborhood that you've built a relationship with, and how can we get the ear of somebody that can help? And do they understand the implications of this? Likely not, just because in general, folks don't understand how farmers markets operate or what they are. And so having that united voice is just going to be so helpful. It's just, I can already see it happening, just having someone to say, hey, I kind of represent a group of all the farmers market managers in this city, and we've all decided this is our voice, this is what we want to say about this is the support that we need. Things like that is just so helpful. I think right after that tragedy in Louisiana around the New Year in New Orleans, the San Diego City Police reached out to our neighborhood business improvement district executive director and said, hey, do you want to talk about barricades and street closures and how we can maybe make this safer for our folks here? So he pulled me into that conversation, and we had the chief of police, we had the assistant to the mayor on that call, we had all these representatives, council person. There was 7 or 8 people on there. Also the liaison to the FBI for the city of San Diego, and those folks were on there with just me and the director for our neighborhood. And I was just answering questions. They were talking about street closures, and many of them said, is there a main group or this is kind of like what planted this seed in the beginning of this year. They said, is there like a group or somewhere where we can talk to all the markets at once? Like, who is that? And I go, well, we all have to talk to ag. We all have to talk to health. I go, not all of us talk to the city because not all the markets are on city streets. And so they are talking to like school rental groups and not the city. So I go, yeah, that'd be great to get a group together. They were all like insanely perplexed about how markets were even set up. And these are like big people in our city, in a big city.
Conversely, is there a group of regulatory agents that we can where we can talk to them all at once while they're busy contradicting each other? And and each of them in their own little box and not knowing what the other ones are doing.
Also that. But I mean, just recognizing that, oh yeah, they do want to like talk to all of us. They do want to make sure that we're all definitely following the same rules and managing our permits and inspections and stuff all the same. That's really important. But they also want to share like safety information with us. So I had the chief of police come out and walk through the market and say, oh, okay, this would be better if this barricade was like this and things like that, and things that I think are very safe at the market. But he is much more of an expert in that area than I am. And so I was able to make some adjustments and then also explain why I had certain things set up in certain ways.
Well, and certain things you were doing were by fire department regulation.
Yes.
But certain things that the police department didn't like. So
exactly. He wanted me to block the street completely off with a hard closure. And I said, well, the fire department makes me have a 20-foot fire lane, so I can't do a complete hard closure on it.
But that would be a great conversation to be having with the entire group of the San Diego Market Managers Coalition, so they could all hear the same things and explain what they're dealing with. Maybe the school district has a different kind of fire lane regulation. And
yes.
How should those sites be closed off?
Exactly.
So I think that'd be really important.
Yeah.
Also, I think a lot of markets around the country have strong state associations. Definitely not all of them. I think about a little over half of states have an actual active farmers market association. Mm-hmm. But the ones that do have that, a lot of times they're in larger states. They may have different regions within the state, different cities within the state where folks in San Diego have something in common. Folks in San Francisco, Bay Area have something in common. Those two things don't necessarily line up. But you've got a state agency that's got some power and numbers that can go to the legislature or even go to the governor. We had a big push last year around EBT and nutrition incentives. It would be helpful, I think, for the state association to be able to hear from a whole region at one time. They're oftentimes underfunded associations and they don't have huge staffs. Do they have time to talk to every market manager in San Diego? Maybe not while they're collecting information, especially if it's sort of an emergency measure or something that they're responding to. It would be so handy for them to be able to reach out and say, hey, what's the San Diego group think about this? And you be able to quickly get an email that everybody signs on to or a letter that can go back to them that says, from our region's point of view, this is what would make sense and this is what we would like you to do in terms of advocating for us.
Exactly. And that could just help any small group in any state across the country, even if your group is 3 market managers.
Sure.
It's like those voices all coming together is just always going to be more powerful than having 3 fragmented kind of points of contact or people who aren't sharing ideas or aren't getting their voices kind of synced up. So it can always help. Yeah. And I will say in California, we don't have a great state association. We have a California Alliance of Farmers Markets, and I'm a committee member, and it's a great group, but we're not doing these like big advocacy things.
Yeah, I don't think advocacy has been as much of a priority as it could have been for that group.
Yes.
And I think we can both say this as people who have served on the steering committee. So we're not just dissing somebody else. It's just that's how that group has evolved. And it hasn't been, generally speaking, as involved in advocacy as some other state associations are.
Yeah, exactly. And we know that there's room to improve, and we do a lot of really great work. There's a lot of work to be done. There's a lot of farms and farmers markets in the state of California. It's a huge state, so dealing with a lot. But I think, we don't have a really great association. But if we had these regional groups that were all kind of like collecting voices and bringing some more data to the table and more concerns, we as an alliance could get more organized with how we are interpreting that and what we're doing with that information that's really going to benefit everybody in the state all the way down to our city groups.
Right. Yeah. Absolutely. And I think that's not true just here in California. I mean, you look at Illinois, the collective in Chicago is serving people that operate in a big urban area. Their concerns are probably a little bit different than the farmers and farmers markets in Southern Illinois, which is much more rural.
Yeah.
So even though they have a strong state association, having regional groups that can report to them would be really helpful, I'm sure.
Yes, it would be great to get all of those folks involved. We think about the Imperial County part of San Diego or of California and just more kind of rural, like disconnected parts too, who aren't necessarily maybe coming to these policy group meetings or working with these other agencies the way some of the bigger markets are. It'd be nice to just kind of pull them into a more centralized, like near them group.
Right.
Yep.
So I think the other thing that comes up there I was noticing is you're sharing info about vendors.
Yeah.
It's funny because there was a discussion in our private online group recently about, is there a way to centralize kind of information on vendors? And if you've got a vendor that's maybe had an aggression problem or it's an actual serious issue, it would be handy to let other market managers know. And there's a whole can of worms on that. I had kind of responded to that and said, we could set it up like Airbnb. The vendors can rate the hosts and the managers can rate those tenants. Can of worms, can of worms, can of worms.
Absolutely
Who knows how
not.
that would go. And you and I have talked about that. Anytime you're talking about vendors, you can have a vendor that really struggles in one market situation and is not fun, doesn't get along with the other vendors, high maintenance in terms of trying to get the rules across and things. And then they could go to another market and just shine. It's, it's just a different group. It's a different tone, different set of guidelines, and they're superstars in that market. So it's hard to make a really objective call on a vendor's quality. But I think sharing info about vendors in terms of, who needs a vendor in this category? You're all full with bakeries. You've got a big wait list. You've got 6 bakery applications. Maybe this market over here is short on bakeries or doesn't have a gluten-free baker or, needs somebody in that category. How do you share that kind of information and referrals? And this kind of group is good for that.
Yes, it's definitely something that has come up every time we've met up, is the markets that are still maybe the newer markets that are growing, markets that are struggling right now and having, like issues retaining vendors. They always the question always comes up like, do you have folks on the waiting list so you could point in our direction? Like, could we have a shared kind of link where folks can go there and look at all the markets that are, because I know it's set up differently in every area, but in San Diego, we just have like the Department of Ag just recently put all the market manager contact information like on their site. And then our Farm Bureau has always done a good job of having all of that listed there. Sometimes they don't keep it completely updated because markets are opening, they're closing, they're changing location, they're changing managers, but they do, the best job that they can. And that is where I send folks that are applying to my market. If I'm super, because I'm super full, I say, okay, this is where you can go to find market management information for everybody. Because I think vendors don't realize that they can't just like apply to one, like fill out one application.
So many people think
and
that.
it goes to all markets. And so I get that question a lot, like, oh, how do I apply to these other markets? Or can I get into, the Carlsbad market or something? Yeah. So, and I was like, no, I don't manage that. And they're like, what? What do you mean? So I think they just think that it's just one central thing. And then I have to tell them, you have to go talk to each of these individual market managers, see what they have available at their market and what their application process is, because it's a little different for all of them. So really talking about how to sync that up a little bit better and share vendors that are looking to get into a market, because sometimes, and this is what happens too, I get applications or interest. I mean, right now I don't even have an application open, but I have an interest form. I look through that all the time just to see who's popping in there, and I'll see a product that is so cool and that I would love to have at my market. I think would do really, really well. It's something unique, or it's something that I need at the market, but I just don't have physical space to put another vendor in. But I don't want this vendor to like stop being a vendor because they can't get in somewhere. And so I want somewhere to direct them where they can get into a market, build up their business, and then either like thrive there and do, a great job at whatever market they land at. Or if I eventually have space, then they're ready to come in to my market too. So it benefits everybody, and especially just like benefits the vendors, because without farmers and vendors, there's no farmers markets.
Right.
And so we need to just constantly be like helping and supporting these vendors find a place where they can do business and thrive.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, the Chicago group has, because they've been around for a long time, they started, 7 years ago, they're pretty organized about some things. They have a joint inquiry form for vendors where the vendors can list like most of the information that you would put on an individual application, information about what permits they have in place and what their product is and maybe where they're located. And that goes into a central document that any market manager in the group can scroll and see if they have an opening for that category. Then they reach out to the vendor with their own specific application and they take it from there. So you could do that. They're pretty organized about it, and they've got a whole form on their website and things. But I think we were talking when we met earlier this month about just having a Google Drive kind of Excel form And you were talking about putting a box on your application that said, do you mind if we share this information with other market managers?
It's already on there.
Yeah,
I added
there we
it
go.
already. Yep.
Excellent.
Yes.
And then when somebody checks that, just drop their basic information, what their product is, their name and contact info into that doc, and then share that doc with everybody, all the other managers who are interested, who could kind of scroll through and say, oh, look, there's a gluten-free baker. Mine's leaving. Mine's moving out of town, or just had a baby and they're going to be off for a while, or what have you, and you've got another applicant that you can go to. And I think that's so smart. The other thing that Chicago does, and we've talked about here trying to get something like this going, but again, complicated, they have a job board. So anybody can, not just the managers for market staff, but vendors can post to there and say that they're looking for booth help and things. And that, to me, I think would be so helpful to have a job board. Personally, of course, I want to have like a speed dating for vendors and vendor employees kind of meetup thing, do some kind of event where you can get all those applicants together, because I know there's people looking for jobs. And I feel like the biggest struggle for vendors getting to additional markets is not having enough staff. And it seems like an organization like this could be a great kind of centralized place to help people find people.
I would love that, because vendors are always asking me, do you know anybody who wants to work? Like, I want to expand to this other market that's on the same day as your market, but I don't have the staff to do it, so I can't join. And I need to be in the kitchen. I have so much production going on. I have to be in the kitchen, and I don't have any staff to work the actual market, or vice versa. So it'd be so great to have some centralized place where we can point folks that are looking for that, and also people who need staff, either market operators or vendors, can go on there and be connected with folks that are already interested in working in the farmers market space.
Right.
Yeah.
I know that two of the managers at our recent meetup were saying that they were going to try to get together to share market staff, because it is hard to find somebody and retain somebody good if you only have one day a week of shifts to offer them. You know, if you're the manager, you've got additional days of work to do, but for your on-site assistant managers and things, a lot of times you only have one day, one shift. So how do you motivate somebody to stay engaged? Well, we, for a long time, when we had multiple markets, had staff that would work at multiple markets. So they'd have a day in Pacific Beach, and they'd have a day in North Park, and they'd have 2 days in Little Italy. And that's how they end up with a close enough to full-time schedule that they were motivated to stay.
Yes, but if you're not interested in opening up 3 additional markets, and
we're not.
And we're not. Well, and you're the nuts one.
I was
I'm
the
the one
one
that's saying absolutely
down.
not. I'm good with my 2. That's plenty. But I mean, you and I share a staff member.
Right.
I mean, like
Right.
just with your Sunday market and my two markets, so that we can make sure that she gets a nice full-time job between the 2. But I think a lot of markets would do really well to have that. Plus, being a market staffer is like such a weird niche job. It takes a lot of training to figure out, especially if you have EBT being processed at your
Right.
market. I mean, something really specific. And so having someone that's already trained and knows how to talk to the vendors, there's probably vendor overlap. So they know, oh, okay, this person needs to be reminded about their tent weights, or this person needs a little extra time to come in. So make sure you remind them to come in early. I mean, just these things that we learn about all these different folks. It's nice if it's the same kind of market staff that's bopping around between a couple markets that can help out in that capacity and not take up a bunch of time training a whole new person. And then also just having them for one day a week, and maybe that doesn't work for them and they're not with you for very long and they leave and they have to train someone else. So the struggle is definitely real for market staff and then also market vendor staff.
Yeah, I think it makes so
regard.
much sense.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that can really apply right now when we're talking about surviving and thriving, the challenges of this year. You know, a lot of people who have lost funding, they're probably having to lay off staff or cut back on staff hours, line up with another organization that needs somebody, but again, not full time, and make sure that that staff member has enough time to stay in the sector.
Yep, exactly. And then we also talked actually at our last group meeting about like a temp worker situation where maybe there's a couple of folks who are just plugged in, like when my regular staff is out, they just come in like for the day. Now that gets a little tricky, like payroll wise. So you want to make sure that you're following.
And sites are so specific.
And there's very specific too. But if you have the ability to have someone on your payroll that's just coming in when someone's out, but they can also be working at other markets in the meantime, so they're not, drifting off by not getting enough hours, I think that could be super helpful too, because I have a great, like my staff is set. I don't need anybody else on the staff. But if I have like 2 people that are out on the same day, it's a tight day. It's a struggle. So it'd be nice to be like, okay, someone can pop in for the day. So figuring that out would be really, really helpful. And that's a thing that can only happen in a really like tight group like this or collective like this. That's not like a state association job. So getting together with your fellow like real close by farmers market managers could be helpful with that.
Right. I think we're sharing info about fee structures and rules, and I think that's helpful because a lot of times when you're trying to determine what your it's like determining the cost and the price of anything. We talked about this in another episode. You need to figure out the cost to produce your market and then look at what the cost of your space fee will be. But just like when you figure out the cost of making a cookie and then figure out what the price of your cookie is going to be, part of that decision is based on what it costs you to produce it. And the rest has to be based on what the market will bear. What are people going to pay for a cookie? What are other people charging for cookies so you don't seem outrageous? So I think the same thing applies with space fees. So being able to compare with other market managers, what is your traffic count and what are you charging for a space fee? Am I using a ratio that makes sense? That's really helpful to talk to other managers and figure out what the local kind of market standard is.
Exactly. Yeah. And just being able to look at those numbers, because a lot of us aren't putting our very specific fees, up front. There's a percentage, so it kind of varies. Or like we have a sliding scale with our flat fees. So it just like really specifically depends on what you're selling. So it's hard to put that information out there publicly. But if you're with a group where you can really share that, I mean, I freely share my fee structure with all the farmers market managers that are there because I want them to know, oh, okay, this volume of this market that has this volume is charging this. What are my overhead costs? I mean, and even markets that may look the same from the outside, they might have internally different types of cost. Sure. So it's not like, oh, you're going to go to one market and it's going to be this fee and then a similar market's going to be the exact same fee. I mean, it's varying degrees. But I think newer market managers or market managers that are looking to expand and have those added costs, they really want to bounce some ideas off other folks about how they structure those things. And like, who are you bouncing that off of? People who don't understand farmers markets, or finding a group that really understands it and gets it, and you can brainstorm those ideas.
Right.
Yeah.
I thought it was helpful too for kind of newer managers to have managers that explain, hey, look, you need to have this kind of minimum percentage of farmers if you're going to call it a farmer's market. And if you don't, okay, one thing is it's just kind of ick if you're calling it a farmer's market and you have no farmers. But the other thing is you're not going to get farmers if you're calling it a farmer's market and you don't have any farmers. You're going to turn off the farmers. You're going to develop a reputation with them that's not good, and explaining to them how if you want to grow into a real farmer's market, maybe you want to call that something different to start with. And how you manage vendors. And I just feel like the younger managers or the newer managers, I might say, not necessarily younger, that are just kind of getting into it are picking up a lot from the veterans. And honestly, us managers that, we managers that have been in this for a really long time are picking up such great ideas from the newer managers that they're not stuck in their ways. They haven't always done it this way, so they have new ideas. And so that's been great. So kind of mixing the very experienced and the very new managers, I think really benefits everybody.
I felt like that was really great because I could learn a lot. I've been managing markets for a long time, but not as long as Mary, who was there, who's been managing for 38 years.
Yeah, wow.
And not someone who does a producers only, or someone who, started a brand new market that's now a huge market. It's like there's a lot of different perspectives there. And then plus just all the newer managers that are coming in that actually like have really good ideas. And I know I've said it before, but like I learn a lot from my fellow market managers who like I train, like Art, who runs PB. I trained him at my market. He worked for me, and now he's running in his own market, and he gives me ideas all the time that I have implemented at the market. So
yeah, he's taught us things about invoicing.
Yeah.
It's great.
Who knew? I know. So, and just like placement and all those things, and then we can exchange like vendor curation ideas with him and kind of share that stuff. So we all have this really open mind about it, and turn it into more of like a collaborative versus like oh, you're going to steal my idea, or oh, your market's going to be better than mine if I teach you this thing, which I think is a difference from how even in San Diego it used to be. We never used to talk to other market managers.
I got kicked out of markets for wandering through looking for, ideas for vendors or farmers that I could invite to my market on a different day, by the way. Wasn't breaking any etiquette rules, but I had market managers that asked me to leave. So it used to be much more protective. I think we've finally gotten our heads around the idea that we're not competing with each other. We're competing with big box grocery stores. There will always be that little bit of competition in terms of there's not enough farmers to go around, I feel like. Sure. And so people are protective of that. But you can't really make a farmer stay with you except by being a great market. So,
Yeah.
Chasing another market manager away is not going to solve your problem if you're having a hard time retaining farmers.
That's not the problem to focus on.
Right.
And I will say that I would always be nervous. Even like 10 years ago, I would be nervous about going to another farmer's market. But sometimes it's like you're too busy at your own market to shop. So I'm like, well, like I need lettuce. So like I have a market in my neighborhood that's on Sunday that I don't run. I want to like run over there and get some stuff. But I used to feel like, oh, is this going to be weird? Are they going to be wondering what I'm doing there? Are the vendors going to be weirded out too? Like they don't usually see other market managers at markets.
Just don't take a clipboard.
Just don't take a clipboard. Don't wear a badge.
Don't wear your safety vest.
No. Unless you're doing content at someone else's market. Thank you. Right. Also to our friends that let us do that. But I think now it's very common. I see a lot of other market managers at my market. They come and shop, or they do come and talk to the vendors about their like Tuesday or Wednesday evening market, and they're coming to my market and talking to the vendors. I don't care.
Yeah.
Like I want my vendors are grown-ups. They can make a decision where they want to be. I'm not in charge of their schedule or what they do. And also vendors have been better about like, oh, I got into this other market. I'm going to go over there and be in that market. It makes more sense. It's closer to my house. It's a better clientele for me. And, I think market managers have come to the realization that there's a lot of vendors out there, and we don't have to be kind of holding so tightly onto them, like not against their will, but like kind of like grasping at them and like not sharing them, because we all want our vendors to succeed, and there's enough for everybody. So I think when it comes to vendors, that's how I feel about it. And that's how I feel like our fellow market managers feel about it too. And we all go to each other's markets now and like hang out and shop or look for other vendors or come to the market and say, hey, can you show me how you do EBT? Like I'm really struggling with like this process, or what kind of reusable bags are you selling? I want to look at that. Oh, that's a great idea. I'm going to do that at my market. And just sharing that info with each other. It makes all the markets better. And then everybody has a better experience at the markets.
I agree.
Yeah.
Which kind of leads us into the whole etiquette of the thing.
Yeah.
Like who's invited to these meetings?
Yeah.
What's a confidentiality level? I think there is. I mean, obviously we're not making anybody sign a waiver, but I think there's an understanding of what happens at Market Manager Coalition meetings stays at Market Managers Coalition meetings, because sometimes you are venting or you're letting out stress or what have you. And so, you want to be nice about not sharing personal things and getting gossipy little feuds started or any of that. So everybody needs to act professional and have a certain sense of this is proprietary information to the extent that it is.
Yes. I mean, so far with our group, I haven't even like mentioned it, and I just say this meeting is open to folks who run farmers markets. I don't really get very specific about it, but I don't bring my staff with me, even though they are very much helping me run the farmers markets and they do so much of the work with me. But there's a lot of things that are discussed, at least when I go to these meetings, I discuss things that are really nuanced and are not really a part of my staff's job description. Maybe I talk to them about it once in a while, things that are coming up, but they might not understand like that part of the job that I do. And it'll be out of context if they hear us talking about it. And I don't want to confuse what is information they can share with shoppers or vendors and what is information that cannot be shared or shouldn't be just talked about in like little parcels. So I just choose not to bring my staff, not because I'm like trying to tell secrets. I don't talk about staff issues at this meeting. But
somebody did though. I feel like somebody at the meeting had a staff issue that they were trying to figure out.
Yes.
And it may have been, oh, you know what? We definitely had somebody that was talking about paying their staff cash.
Yes.
And many of us jumped in and said, don't do that.
Don't do that. Yes. I think that was like something they had done before and we could give them advice about that.
Right.
I mostly don't talk about my staff very much because I don't have a lot of staff challenges.
Right.
My staff is great. And I do talk about, oh yeah, my staff does this. And they do a good job of it. It's really great to have someone trained up to do that. And so I did have conversations about kind of like the roles that my staff have at the market. And so that was helpful, I think, for newer markets. There are market managers there that use like a team of volunteers, and they were just having a hard time figuring out how to transition to a paid staff because their market was growing and they really needed like paid staffers that were more invested. So we kind of had to talk about that. But it's not for any like nefarious reason. I just want to be able to say, hey, like you deal with the inspectors. This is like an inspector conversation. That's not something my staff is doing. So, but it's up to the group.
It's really up to the group. Yeah. I was going to say, I think the big Chicago group says this is open to any market management and staff
Yeah,
people. So, you can kind of decide how you want to do it. And,
for sure.
and maybe, I think really in San Diego, what you're doing is any managers deciding for themselves. I think there was
Yeah.
somebody there that
Yeah.
had a staff member with them. And
Yeah,
such.
yeah, yeah.
So, it's kind of however you want to do it. But basically, these seem to be kind of manager groups and somewhat open to staff depending on who you want to invite.
Yeah, and you could have like little subgroups that meet up that are
Sure.
maybe managers of brand new markets, and so they
Yeah.
can all talk about those kind of things with each other and not.
I think
have
those
all of
form
us.
based on where people sit in
Yeah.
little corner groups.
Well, yeah, and then that is true too. Like I think ours has been really casual. It's not like a meeting, but people were kind of asking for like it to be more like to have at least a couple of the meetups be a little bit more organized, so we could have like some topics. And so, but yeah, we do all kind of like sit with our like market people. But then I was intentionally kind of like bopping around and talking to folks who were like struggling finding vendors because they had a lot of questions for me. Or, I was asking people questions about their market if they just started because I was just curious. Like,
So
you're on
where to point people.
Yeah, exactly. Or like, you're on school property. I've never run a market on school property before. Like, tell me how that works. So it was nice to get a mix of folks together.
Yeah, I thought so too. So, I mean, getting a thing like this started is not that complicated, right?
It's not complicated, and I have just been thinking about it. And I think we had a little email chain going at the very beginning of the pandemic that
Yeah.
just kind of started.
COVID definitely got more
Organically.
people together because we had
Yeah.
just really specific challenges and everyone was trying to figure out how to cope with the city regulations that changed every day and,
Yes.
and how to deal with these requirements. And does anybody know what snow fence is?
Yes, kind of sharing like how are you going to fence this off?
Right.
What are you going to use to count people? What are you doing when this problem arises? But that was really like
What's your safe word for
Yeah.
your walkie-talkie group?
Yes, exactly. Like, how are you handling the burden on your staff
Right.
and the burden on yourself and some, a little mental health chatter, but not really. And that email chain was not really like that because we were all under such like duress. It was like such an emergency situation that there wasn't really
It's really more
time.
functional.
It was really function. And like this policy changed. Oh, okay, tomorrow it's going to change to this. Oh, did you hear that next week they're going to do this? So it was more like that and like boom, boom, boom. And then also like how to support the farmers. Like, okay, this farm needs our help. Like,
Right.
let's jump to that. So that was really that group. And then that just kind of fizzled out after we all kind of figured out as best we could how to operate our markets. And then they reopened without fences and stuff. So since then, there hasn't really been any contact with anybody unless we're already like friends with them. And so I just kind of like decided to email everybody. I just was like wanted to talk to my friends and I like wanted to be friends with these people. So it was honestly, I just decided one day I took all the information from the Farm Bureau and the ag site and all the email addresses I could find. Sometimes I had to go to their website and try to find a good email address, figure out their name for some people, figure out the day and location of their market. And I just put all of that into my own spreadsheet and got as organized as I could. I know personally, I mean, before we started doing this, I probably knew like 10 or 12 market managers myself personally, either from being at trainings with them or them coming to the conference or me just like being friends with them or I go to their markets. But then everybody else, there were some people on there I did not know who they were. So I could ask Kat, just with your history in the market industry for so long, but some folks were new. So I just put it all on a sheet and then I just sent an email out. I just like, blind copied everybody just in case, people were not interested. And I just said who I was. And I said, I run the Little Italy market. I did say I'm Cat Fields White's daughter because that's, a lot of people, the market managers that have been around for a long time, that's recognizable. And these are the markets that I run. And I think that we should meet up for coffee and just get to know each other. It'd be nice to be able to share ideas. And this isn't going to be a formal meeting. Does that sound good to anybody? And then I shared the link to that spreadsheet because I don't want to like gatekeep the information. So I'm just like, and maybe if you want to get together with folks that are like more like even closer to you, here's their info if you're interested in that. And so many of the market managers were like, oh my gosh, this is so great. I've always wanted to talk to everybody. Oh, like, I'm so glad you did this. I've had like questions for people, or I've wanted to know this person, or I've just wanted to get together with other market managers and just talk about market manager stuff. Or like, oh, I've always wanted to go to your conference and I can't ever make it work. This is like a little mini like get together we could do as like a lead up. And so it was really, really like heartwarming to see. We have 41 farmers markets every single week in the county of San Diego, which equates to between like some people like run markets together. So I think there's like 50 people on that list. like market operators. And I think I heard back from like 45 of them.
Yeah, it's amazing.
It was amazing. Just people that like don't even use like their email or their phones very often, just are very like analog folks who really are not online or maybe don't even have like a website for their farmers market. They got the email and they replied back and it was so nice. I emailed a couple other times. I just kind of suggested a place to get together, had our first meetup. I think there was like 15 or 20 people that came to the first one. And then every time we get together, there's kind of like the same group that comes, and then
always a couple of new people.
Yeah, like 5 new people will come up. It just depends on like everyone's schedule.
Sure.
So figuring that out has been a little bit tough, but I might do like a Zoom meeting at some point.
Yeah, some groups do Zoom. In fact, the Chicago group, I think, does a Zoom meeting. The Philadelphia group does a Zoom meeting.
Mm-hmm.
It is cool, though, if you can manage to get together in person, at least for some of the time, some of the gatherings and meetups.
Mm-hmm.
I just, there's something different.
Yeah.
And if it is hyper local, I feel like it couldn't be that hard to at least at some points get together in person, because there really is something about seeing people face to face. Aren't we all just kind of zoomed out?
Oh, super zoomed out. I mean, it's very convenient, but it is nice to like hug somebody.
Right?
Yeah. So I mean,
break bread.
Break bread. And just either we talk about like tools and tricks and stuff, or we were like, oh my God, I had such a hard day. This hard thing happened. And then I can just hold their hand and just be like, yep, that sucks.
Then it did happen, yeah.
Yeah.
So, kind of find a central location. I think we're looking at sort of alternating around, taking turns. You could take turns, people organizing it.
Yeah.
People.
That's what I said. I go, I don't need to be like I'm not like self-nominating myself as the
Right.
leader. And they were like, no, Bridget, you're so great at this. You should do it. I'm like, okay, well,
yeah, right.
I do have a volunteer organizer
That's
disease.
true. You do. You
It's
have that
very prominent.
between the markets and the school.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I like it. I enjoy it. So it's
Right.
not like a chore to me to
Sure.
like get everybody on a list, and some people aren't
And I think
into
you're
that.
being conscious of,
Yeah.
finding locations that are convenient for everybody and
Yeah.
such.
Except for our last meetup was
Avoid flight paths.
there was we were under the flight path, so we had to take a lot of plane pauses.
Yeah.
So sorry, I did say everyone else, you guys get out more than I do. I go to the same like 5 places over and over. So finding a place that can accommodate everybody, that's what I was
Right.
really looking for. A place that can accommodate folks, that isn't going to be like an expensive place that you
Yeah.
rent. You could like meet up at a
parking.
park.
Sure.
I mean, you could just
We
everyone
met
like
at a
bring your
coffee house
own.
where they had just a lot of room. So,
Yeah.
there was no pressure to buy things necessarily, but there's plenty of room and plenty of parking.
Yep.
You could have an organized agenda.
Yeah.
So far, we have been free-for-alls.
Yep.
But I know that the Philadelphia group always has an agenda.
Yep.
And then we have an agenda, but then we also have a lot of, like, we have a time where it's like, anybody else have anything else they want to talk about? So
Yeah.
even on the Zoom, it's pretty loose.
Kind of share ideas. I do always bring name tags and make everybody wear a name tag because I think
like
that's
that.
important.
Me too.
Yep, because sometimes someone will go, oh, I've been meaning to ask you. I didn't know who ran this market. I have a question for you. So just really making that recognizable. And at our last meeting, we just like went around the table and did a little introduction, who we were, what market we ran, which was really helpful just to kind of make sure, because we do parcel off into little subgroups, but making sure that we all get to know who's there.
Yeah.
It was really fun.
I think all the groups that I know of that are like this, and ours included, are for market managers. But it'd be interesting to see if there are farmer and vendor groups that are organized like this.
Yeah.
I know that there are some like private Facebook groups that are for farmers and vendors of specific markets. I've seen some of those around. I haven't actually heard of people meeting up in person other than at farmers market annual parties, that kind of thing. But I haven't heard of them organizing themselves. I know the farmers do a little bit more. Like there's a Grange in San Diego County, and there are in different parts of the country. And they have conferences and like kind of workshop meetups sometimes, but tend to be more, I think, about farming technique than about their market relationships. But I would think that there'd be an opening for that. I would especially think, honestly, that food makers, like grocery packaged food makers in an area, would be well served to get together and kind of compare notes on doing cooperative packaging purchases and comparing notes on commercial kitchen rentals and that kind of thing. So
All of the things that's really hard to do on like their small scale.
Right.
Kind of grouping together. And I know some of them do. Some of them do partner up and like share
Yeah.
kitchen time or share a co-packer, or they buy pallets of the same type of jar or bag.
Right.
And they just share this cost on that, because then they put their own branding on it. But yeah, I think it would be very helpful. And then also, I mean, they could talk to regulatory agencies too. They could
Sure.
all talk to the health department about
Sure.
any kind of issues they're having with the health department. I mean, they could certainly talk to market managers as a group and have
Sure.
a united voice if there's anything that they want to express as a group to the operators of the markets that they're in.
Sure.
That would be really helpful, because I get a lot of like one-off kind of feedback from everybody, which I always, welcome and listen to. But, it'd be easier for everybody if there was like a concern and it could just be brought forward altogether.
Well, and it'd be helpful if they bring forward a concern or a question that then the market managers could answer, because I'm sure a lot of times vendors think, oh, well, why are they making us crazy with this rule?
Yeah.
And they do one-on-one, of course, approach their market manager and get answers. But it might be handy if they just said, hey, why do we do this? And we're able to say, oh, well, we do that specifically because we have to meet this regulation from the health department or from the city or what have you. Or we do this because we've found that if everybody opens on time, you make better sales or, you know, what have you. But it would be great to talk to a group that could then disseminate that answer to other members of their group so that they all had that information.
All had it at once. Yeah.
Sure.
Because then one-on-one answering questions and answers is a lot.
Skip the frustration part.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And if there was a group, I mean, it'd be nice if there was like these two groups, because then that group could say, hey, a lot of us are looking to get into other markets. What markets would be willing to like look at our applications? And then we could all say as a group, oh, okay, these guys are looking for this. So it's just it would be a nice exchange.
Yep.
I know that it's just hard. I mean, really, as any small business.
We're all busy.
Which I think is what market managers find themselves like not doing these kind of groups very often, because we're so busy and scattered and we're busy on different days.
Right.
So it's hard to sync up. But and vendors are even more so, I think, kind of like scattered around. But, you know,
anything you can do to find your people.
Yeah.
I just feel like it's valuable and it's helpful. And if for nothing else than moral support, it's always so good to talk to people who know what you do and understand that your job is weird and in the specific ways that your job is weird. It's helpful.
Exactly. And to share triumphs and share things at work and say,
wins.
oh my gosh, I got this tent weight and you fill it with water and then you can fold it up and put it in your car. Oh my gosh. You like tell everybody about it, you know, and say, oh, I sold out today, and just be able to like share that with people that are in your same like playing field, just like we do with our market operators, and say, oh my gosh, like I did this thing with my map and it fixed this problem that I've had for years. Oh I can't believe it. Or I ordered these new bike barricades and they look beautiful and I wish I would have done this years ago.
And who else is going to appreciate that?
My husband's sick of it. Sick of hearing about bike barricades. I'll tell you what.
Your girlfriends, you know, that work in an office, they're not going to understand.
No, my friends don't. They do find my job interesting, but not the nuanced parts that I want to really talk about. Right. They want to talk about, you know, all the cool crops that are in season, which is great. I'll talk about that to whoever, whenever. But yeah, it's really great to find your tribe and, you know, find folks that you can share all of this with. And even if it's like once a year, even if it's a phone call, even if it's an email, like just something, reach out and talk to people in your sphere and let us know about it. I mean, if you have a market manager like meetup, tag us on Instagram. I want to see those meetups. I want to see those, you know, send us the email that you send out to everybody.
Yeah,
like, what does that look like? Yeah, that'd be nice. So,
hey, put together a presentation and submit a proposal for Intense about how your coalition works.
There we go.
I'm sure we'd all love to hear it. Thanks for being with us today.
Thanks, everyone. See you next time.
Thanks for listening today, and big thanks to MarketWorks for helping farmers market managers by putting all of the tools to succeed in one place, and for supporting Tent Talk, the Farmers Market podcast, and Intense, the National Farmers Market Conference. Find more information and sign up for MarketWorks by clicking their logo on the resource page at farmersmarketpros.com.
Thanks for listening to Tent Talk today. Please leave us a review on your podcast app or wherever you listen to Tent Talk. Let us and others know how you're enjoying the podcast. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss the next episode of Tent Talk. Connect with fellow farmers market folks in our private Facebook group, the Farmers Market Pros Community, and follow us on Instagram at Farmers Market Pros. Find online education and other resources at farmersmarketpros.com. Tent Talk is brought to you by Farmers Market Pros, where passion meets profit. Tent Talk is hosted by Kat Fields White and Bridget Myers and produced by Leandra Hayes, with original music by David Mead. Tune in next week for another great episode.